Hello, everyone. We hope you've been enjoying the TIFF Industry Conference from the comfort and safety of your home or office. We've got a great lineup of talks on day 4. My name is Jeff McNutt, and I'm the Senior Director of Industry and Theatrical here at TIFF. And I'd really like to welcome you to this microsession on harnessing media to make positive social change. This conversation will be available on our TIFF Digital Cinema Pro tomorrow, so let your colleagues know in case they missed it. It's the same for all of our sessions. They're all available there 24 hours after they premiere here. I'd like to thank our lead sponsor, Bell, major sponsor, RBC and L'Oreal Paris and Visa, and our major industry supporters, Telefilm Canada and Ontario Creates. This session is presented by Braun Studios in celebration of their 10th anniversary. So happy anniversary, and thank you so much, Braun, for supporting us. Please enjoy this session.
Good afternoon. My name is Joteka Edie, founder and CEO of Full Circle Strategies. And we have a fantastic panel for you today. Joining us, we have Braun's founders and partners, Aaron L. Gilbert, chairman and CEO, and Brenda Gilbert, president. Some of their notable films have included Joker, Fences, Queen and Slim, and the highly anticipated Candyman, Judas and the Black Messiah, and Ghostbusters. Also joining us, we have Larry Jackson, head of content for Apple Music. He is the visionary behind the radio shows for Nicki Minaj's Queen Radio, Virgil Abloh's Television Radio, Kendall Jenner's Zaza World Radio, and most recently, Lil Wayne's Young Money Radio. And last but certainly not least, we also have joining us the man who the Washington Post calls the go-to attorney for racial justice, Attorney Benjamin Crump, who has been fighting for racial justice and social change for his entire career. Some of his clients include the families of Trayvon Martin, Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, George Floyd, and he is also representing the most recent survivor of police shootings, Jacob Blake. Well,
thank you.
Let's get right into it and let's get started. So I'm going to start with you, Aaron and Brenda. We understand that Braun's 10-year anniversary is in October. Can you just give us an overview of the company and talk to us about the various products that you've produced over the past decade?
Sure. So thank you. And again, really thank you for being here. It's really our honor to have all three of you guys with us. We are indeed celebrating our 10-year anniversary this year. It's hard to believe. I think when you set out and start a company, I don't know if you necessarily know what your end goal is going to be. But what we've been able to do over the last many years is just continue to, find our way, moving into different parts of the industry, a digital sector, sales sector, animation, live action, film, TV, and most importantly, the kinds of stories that we tell. So we've been in business together. Braun is Brenda and Aaron. That's where it came from. It's strength and power. That's sort of where we started together. And when we launched the company, we started with a film group, and that just continued to expand into what is now a pretty strong financing arm, a global sales arm, a digital arm as well. And semi-recently also moving into non-scripted, which is a very important part for us. In fact, with Mr. Crump, we have a very important show called Homicide or Justified that we're in the middle of putting together, and it's a great honor to work with him on that. So Brenda and I together have always worked hard to tell important stories. We've always worked hard to create opportunities for many. And if you look at the films that we make, we want to make movies that matter. And that's really at the core of who we are as Braun.
The reason why we're doing these types or these genre of movies is to make an impact. And it's also not just to make an impact, but to carry conversation well beyond the medium that the content is consumed. So whether it's talking about criminal justice reform, talking about giving people voices, talking about, altering this and cutting down and breaking down the barriers when it comes to the school to prison pipeline, making sure that the representation in front of the screen is accurate, it's genuine, and also that we have people behind the scene portraying that as well in the best and most meaningful way possible. We want to help in terms of foundational support and have charities and things like that as accompanying pieces to all the content that we're putting out there. It's very important to Aaron and I. And we want to have diverse forces and also diverse voices.
Well, you certainly made a major impact over the last 10 years, and I think everyone is excited to see what the next 10 years will look like. Attorney Crump, I want to go to you. First of all, let me just say on behalf of everyone that's watching, thank you for everything that you do, all the work that you do. I want to just sort of ask you, or just sort of get into the purpose and the drive here, and ask what fuels you. I know personally that your phone rings often. It rings a lot, and just given what's happening in the world, I'm not quite certain if it will ever stop ringing. But when you think about the work that you're doing now, at any point did you ever know that this is what you would be doing, that you wanted to be a voice in the struggle for justice?
I did, and thank you so much for having me on this panel with this esteemed group of individuals. Aaron and Brenda, I'm so fortunate to be working with you all on telling important stories. And to Larry Jackson, I'm such an admirer for what you do to uplift the culture. With that being said, in answering your question, I always knew that I was going to be an attorney. I knew that since I was in the 4th grade, and we integrated the schools in my little hometown of Lumberton, North Carolina. And I was told by my mother that the reason we got to go to the newer schools in the white community that had the best technology and the new books and the new facilities was because of Thurgood Marshall and Brown versus the Board of Education. And I made a decision right then that I was going to grow up and be like Thurgood Marshall and try to help people who lived in my community, people who look like me, have a better opportunity at achieving the American dream. And from that day to this one, that is what I have endeavored to do. And I digress just for a second. My heart is heavy. I had an opportunity, as you all know, Aaron and Brenda, to have a cameo in the Marshall movie that Chadwick Boseman starred as Thurgood Marshall, along with my client's Trayvon Martin's parents. And as we all woke up this morning, we were devastated to find out that we lost our king, Chadwick. And so it's with a heavy heart that I'm thinking about Thurgood Marshall. I'm thinking about him, but I'm also thinking about the power of film, because that film introduced a younger generation to who Thurgood Marshall was. And that's why I applaud Aaron and Brenda so much, because it's about content. That's why I applaud Larry so much. It's about content. And music is in many ways the heartbeat of the movement. And then the content that we put on film helps us reimagine what a better world could look like, a more just society where George Floyd has the opportunity to take a breath, where Breonna Taylor has an opportunity to sleep in peace, where Ahmaud Arbery has an opportunity to run free, where all our children have equal opportunity at life and liberty and the pursuit of happiness. That's what we're fighting for. And we need allies. It's not enough that we're fighting these battles in the courtroom. We have to fight them outside the courtroom. We have to fight them on the TV screens and on the movie screens. We have to fight them when they listen to Apple Music. We have to fight every chance we get a chance to influence the culture. We have to do that. That is the only way we can finally heal from this disease and this sickness of racism that exists in America and all over the world.
Thank you, Ben. And you raise a very important point as it relates to the intersection of culture and how culture really fuels the movement. So, Larry, I want to turn to you. You continue to work with just an array of artists and some of the most influential artists in the world, and have been said to have changed the way the world consumes and enjoy music. When did you realize that this was your professional purpose? And is it true that you signed your first contract at the age of 16?
The vocation that I was first interested in was meteorology. And my dad, I remember he got me a kind of like a summer weekend apprenticeship with the National Weather Service in the Bay Area. And, while meteorology still is of great interest to me, it just was too mundane for me at that age when I was about 8 or 9 when I started doing those weekend apprenticeships. But it was also around that time that I really got into music, and I just started discovering. I lived in the Bay Area, grew up in San Francisco, and I started discovering. I mean, the Bay Area, the soil of the Bay Area was just so rich, with such great musical heritage. Even predating when I was born, going back to artists like Sly Stone and whatnot. But during the time that I was coming up, there was Digital Underground and Tupac and In Vogue and Tony and all these wonderful artists that were being grown in the home in the homegrown soil of the Bay Area. And I think seeing that and being around that, knowing these artists were coming from where I came from, I realized what I wanted to do probably when I was 11, and I realized that music was going to be the way that I could have an impact on pop culture, and pop culture was something that I was looking to have an impact. So yes, I did get my first contract to become the music director of that radio station when I was 16. But that was perhaps maybe a gift and a curse, because by the time I was 17, I was actually expelled from high school because I knew so steadfastly, with such certainty, what I wanted to do with my life, and I haven't turned back since. And I've been running since. And I just graduated from high school about 2 years ago because they finally gave me my honorary diploma. But every day, quite frankly, I am still running, not even figuratively, but literally, because, when you're an African American man who hasn't graduated high school, I mean, they gave me an honorary diploma, but 3 out of 4 of us end up in prison. And, my parents are one split second away at any point from calling Mr. Crump, because something could happen to me in particular because of the way that the statistics and the odds are stacked against people who have gone down the path that I have. And I just happen to be, someone who's kind of an anomaly, I suppose, in a certain regard. But there's nobody who's an anomaly when you're Black. I mean, we're all in the same boat together. If I get pulled over, they don't know anything about what I just told you.
Thank you, Larry. You raise a very important point, and you hit on so many issues, particularly as it relates to just the treatment of Black men in society, and how particularly Black men are viewed, and all of the depictions that come along with that viewpoint as it relates to who's on the other side. So I want to go to the Braun team. You've made titles that have created real conversations around very important social issues, whether it's Bombshell, really looking at issues of.
Can I say one quick thing? I thought what Larry said was so poignant, because I'm thinking about Jacob Blake right now. And, he's walking away from the police and they shoot him 7 times in the back. He's not posing a threat when he's walking away with his 3 little boys in the car. And then I think about the movie Queen and Slim that Brenda and Aaron produced. I mean, that is the reality to Black people in America. I think Black people all over the world, that is the reality, that any moment you can be profiled and killed and marginalized and swept under the rug. And Larry mentioned Tupac Shakur. I did this docuseries, Who Killed Tupac, because Tupac's mother and my mother went to high school together, went to New York together for a brief time when they finished in our little hometown of Lumberton, North Carolina. And even though Tupac was one of the most famous, most celebrated, most gifted rapper, actors we had ever seen when he was shot and killed in what was probably one of the most public drive-by shootings in the history of the world. He was treated just like any other Negro. That means the investigation didn't result in anybody being held accountable. His mother went to her grave brokenhearted, and there was no justice for Tupac Shakur. So I just, when Larry said that, as successful and accomplished as he is, at any moment, if we're stopped on the side of the road, we can become just like Jacob Blake Jr.
And I'll offer one last thing to punctuate. I appreciate that, Benjamin. I'll add one more thing to that, is that I recently spent the month in Santa Barbara, and I brought my bicycle with me, and I'm riding around Montecito, and I'm thinking, I don't look like anybody else in this neighborhood. So who's to say that somebody can't come behind me with a rifle and take my life? Because I've never said this before, but my own brother was brutalized by the police of San Francisco. And just a month ago, I'm here in Beverly Hills. Just a month ago, my barber was stopped right outside my house by the Beverly Hills Police Department, who asked him, where are you going? Are you lost? Because it looks like you don't know where you're going. He says, I'm going right here. I pulled up right beside him. I said, this is my house. We got a problem? And while my defiance was merited, the both of us could have been in trouble. And my parents, again, could have been on the phone with Mr. Crump. He could have been representing them, as they honored my life. And this is something that we deal with. It doesn't matter how accomplished I am, head of whatever. Head of nothing matters nothing at any particular point in time out here.
Larry and Ben, you emphasize a point that I think often in Black America, we have these conversations. We should have these conversations more, because there are many hashtags, but there's so many that aren't hashtags. And I think that we have to begin to recognize the fact that there's so many Black men and also Black women who have these experiences, and they never become hashtags, but they still have these experiences. I want to go to the Braun team. Larry and Ben both shared these experiences, and you've highlighted these experiences in your film. How important is it to you to ensure that these stories, these experiences are highlighted in film in a way that actually really moves people to more empathy, honesty, and hopefully more action?
These are stories that are so important to be telling. It goes back for us to probably the first film like this that we were involved in was The Birth of a Nation, which was very important that same year, Fences. And since that time, have been involved with many movies that sort of deal with, social issues, cultural issues, race issues. Those are things that have to be talked about, and they require conversation, not just within the Black community. They require conversation amongst every community, because the only way there's going to be change is when there's real conversation amongst everybody. So for me, for Brenda, when we're looking at movies, when we're looking at stories to tell on the big screen, small screen, whatever screen that is, they have to be authentic, they have to be real. They also have to sort of mean something, and that's really the kind of stories that we gravitate towards.
I was just going to say is that's why it's really important that we collaborate, that we join hands with Mr. Benjamin Crump. And I was introduced to Benjamin Crump by Cassandra Butcher, who's a friend and colleague. And I remember one of my first conversations with you, Ben, was my son is going to, be in LA for a period of time. I told him certain things that I won't normally do in Canada. In the sense of, if you get pulled over by a police officer, put both your hands on the steering wheel and make sure that you communicate exactly what you're doing, whether you're reaching for your driver's license or your registration. And the advice that you gave me, Ben, was make sure if it's dark outside that the interior lighting is on. And why I'm telling everybody this story is because in Canada, we don't necessarily have to have that conversation. So when we put content out there, when we communicate with people, when we collaborate with people, is that we want that awareness to be out there, that these are the things that are happening to our counterparts, to our colleagues, to our friends, to our loved ones that we really care about. And we want to make sure that they understand that this is not something that you also see in movies. This is happening in reality. This is real life, people. And that's what's important.
Yeah, I want to jump in here because you talk about this experience, and what's real, and I don't think anyone will deny, is that systemic racism is very real in America. And that in order to deal with racism, we really have to unlearn and undo racism. And an important aspect of that is really media, because we constantly see images, and these images perpetuate false ideas about Blackness. In many ways, it could be positive, but also negative. So when we think about the role of media, what do you believe and how do you think that media play a major role in just the images of Black people, Black men particularly? I want to start with you, Ben.
Okay. You know, media has a profound effect. I put in my book, Open Season, the legalized genocide of colored people, because it talks about not only are they killing us on the street corners in these high profile police shootings, but far worse than how they killed Trayvon or Michael Brown or 12-year-old Tamir Rice or George Floyd, any of these horrific things that we made hashtags, is how they kill us every day in every city, in every state, in every courtroom in America with these trumped up felony convictions. And I do mean trumped up felony convictions. You can have little white boys and girls have very similar fact patterns as little Black and brown boys and girls. And you see the little white children get a slap on the wrist, and then they're escorted out the courtroom to live out the fulfillment of their destinies that God has for them, and have every opportunity at achieving the American dream. And then you will see the little Black children get taken over to the corner of the courtroom. They're fingerprinted, they're handcuffed, and they are convicted of a felony conviction that they now have to wear like a cross on their backs for the rest of their entire life. And so it is really about the media projecting these images in our subconscious mind that has an impact on the jurors, has an impact on the prosecutors, has an impact on the judges, because Malcolm X was right. Malcolm X said that one of the most powerful drugs ever created in the world was television. He said it has you thinking things in your subconscious thought that you're not even realizing that you're thinking. So if they keep making all these negative images on Black people, Black men especially, they're criminals, they're thugs, they're lazy, they're domestic violence abusers. I mean, every negative image, you watch the evening news, there's a good chance you're going to see some Black man in handcuffs. You know, you watch movies, they have us fictionalized as these dangerous brutes, these violent animals, and that kind of thing. And so when the jury is sitting there and they hear the case of Trayvon Martin, they don't look at them as they look at their teenage child who's walking home, talking on the phone to his friend, minding his business. Bag of Skittles, can of iced tea. They say, no. It's easier to believe his killer's portrayal of this young Black teenager, that he's up to no good. Because I think that's what the media has projected on society. Our children just can't be children.
Brenda, Aaron, and Larry, I want to get you in on this question because when we think about media, everything from capturing video, podcasts, mobile phones, film, television, music videos. What's your perspective on this question? And Larry, I'm interested in your perspective, particularly given all of the vocal music artists that you have on your show as well.
You know, media has had in the 20th century, has had a tremendous impact on just the perception of African American people in this country in a way that probably no other century ever has. You know, there would be no Rodney King without someone out there with a camcorder capturing that. There would not have been the Watts riots without the emergence of the nightly news depicting these things from Middle America for the first time. These things that we used to talk about, but no one ever believed us. It never was plausible. You know, so when the nightly news, Cronkite and the nightly news networks, and this was in the emergence in the 60s of the major networks for the first time. And there wasn't even a Fox at that time yet. It was so new and nascent. Wasn't even a CNN, wasn't even any of that at all. I mean, it was very basic, you know. But when they covered that, that was a very big deal in 1965. And that led to the riots. And now people are saying, you know, it's because of the videos that these things are happening. But again, you know, it really is. Malcolm X 100% was so on point about that and prophetic about that. Television did bring our struggles and our plight to the forefront. It was a lot more basic perhaps at that time and a lot less chronicled. And now with social media, videos can be uploaded, and you know, it's a big part of the work that Mr. Crump does is actually as a result of the modernization of technology in that regard, and how frequent these cases are coming up, and the plausibility of these cases based on what we can see with our own two eyes because of that. And the media can't manipulate that because the people look after their social channels. But beyond that, you know, it's amazing also to see what hip hop and what the NBA have done for broadening the Black experience as well. You know, R&B as well. I mean, today is Michael Jackson's birthday. Would have been 62 years old today. Arguably the greatest Black crossover entertainer of all time. And when you think about when Michael Jackson came of age, which was the same time of Whitney Houston in the 80s, they went further and farther than Sammy Davis Jr. and the others that came before. And guess what? They didn't have to enter through the kitchen anymore. They were able to go through the front door, you know, but it was still so new that they had their own identity crises as well. Whitney Houston was a friend of mine. I produced her last album. We spent 5 years together, but she wasn't the person that you saw in the gowns and the whole thing. She was a around the way girl from Newark, New Jersey, but she had to play that down to cross it over, you know? And when I think about hip hop, and when I think about, you know, artists that I've worked with very closely, like Drake and Travis Scott and The Weeknd, you know, you go to their shows, and if I talk to a CEO of a company, you would think that hip hop is just a Black thing. But I submit to you, when I go to a Drake show or a Travis Scott show, it may be 60, 70% white kids there and Latino kids there if I go to a show in LA, you know? And that's how far we've come, and that's how influential our culture is. So when I look at something like TikTok now, and I see there was an amazing article that was written last month. You all should read it if you haven't. It was called TikTok and the Evolution of Digital Blackface. And when you look at the most popular TikTok influencers that are on there, they're all primarily white. But what are they doing that actually is driving them or propelling them to stardom on TikTok? They're dancing to hip hop videos, and they're miming reality stars like Nene Leakes. So the very essence of why they actually are becoming popular is by miming and appropriating, Black culture. So when I think about who we are as a people, you know, I think about Black Panther, and I think about vibranium, and I think about our souls, and I think about what our souls are when I think about Whitney Houston, Michael Jackson, who I just mentioned, Drake, Travis Scott, The Weeknd, etc., Benjamin Crump. I think about all of our souls are being fought over by the devil daily, because what we have in there is almost like a diamond mine. It's like vibranium, and they just pluck from it every day until there's nothing left, like Brother Boseman. And it's a shame what that brother had to go through. over the last few months, being humiliated and criticized about the way that he looked after the way that he lifted up Black culture. And that's a positive way that he impacted Black culture. That's why Black people are in mourning today about his passing, because he made us feel good for the first time in a long time in 2018 about our place in society and culture that had never been done before at that particular point. At that level, had never been done before.
Chad treated us so kindly, Trayvon Parents and I, when we were on the set of Marshall, and he was just a light. Like Larry was saying, I mean, he really lit up the room, not by joking or playing anything, just by being himself. And I kept thinking, man, life is so unfair. You mentioned Michael, you mentioned Whitney, now Chad. All our lights are being taken away from us, and we really have to treasure them.
All people, by the way, who died before they reached the age of 50. Whitney Houston was 48. Michael Jackson had just turned 50. Chadwick was 43. I mean, just think about what we give to the society through our art and through our spirit and through our soul and through our vibranium.
Yeah.
You know, which is talked about as a fictional mineral in Black Panther, but it's something that actually is inside all of us who are at the forefront of getting to the mountaintop. Our souls are diamond mines, and it's the spine of America, but it's unrequited love, and it's like we're constantly looking for love in all the wrong places in a society that wants to mine our souls and profit from him. And you think about what Chadwick meant to Marvel and to Disney, and how he looked at the profits of those companies.
Yeah, and Larry and Brendan, Aaron, it's so deep, because when we're out there in the protest with Black Lives Matter, and Joe Taylor, you know this, you see these signs, and the young people be cut right to the heart and soul, the crux of the matter, and they say, I wish America loved Black people like they love Black culture.
It's true.
You raised a very important point, because when you think about Black culture defines America.
It does.
Black culture is America in so many ways, and Chadwick
even down to butt implants and butt injections. Where do you think that came from?
That's right.
What do you think about the lip injections? Who do you think that's mimicking? Huh? You know, brother Kanye West is a friend of mine, and I often say to him, man, you're the only friend that I know who the devil is competing for his soul daily. Kanye West, as much as anybody wants to say about him, look at how many people he's lifted up. Look at he's helped the Kardashians. He's helped along Drake. He's helped along Adidas. He's helped along Nike. He's helped along Universal. And you know, he's just as much of a powerful communicator, Black communicator, as Michael Jackson and Whitney Houston.
That's true.
Yeah. So Chadwick Boseman is heavy on a lot of hearts and minds and souls. And I want to raise this question of, how do we think and believe that the media can play a role in honoring Chad's legacy and being more engaged and playing a leading role in creating positive images of Blackness? We think about what Chadwick did for young Black kids and how they feel of having a superhero, and you speak about vibranium, and we all have those very positive feelings. And how can media and the work that those of you who are behind the camera producing, creating films that project these positive images and or tell these stories?
I will say this, and then I think Brenda, I will say this, and I think Brenda and Aaron may be the better people to answer this question. But Larry, when you were talking about vibranium and you were breaking it down, it got really profound, because I do think that was a symbol of Black people's heart when you watch that film, Black Panther. And so it was a profound analogy, brother.
Thank you.
The last things that Chad said to me in person, and it is so surreal that he's gone. We were on the film set of the movie, and we were in the makeup trailer, and Chad was so committed to getting it right and being authentic. He kept asking me things about how's it really when you're in the courtroom, and then he would say, how's it when you get death threats, Mr. Crump? And, you know, because he was like, Thurgood Marshall got these daily death threats. How's it when you go into a new town like Kenosha, Wisconsin? You know, Brunswick, Georgia with Ahmaud Arbery. You know, so he was asking these real questions. And, you know, I was trying to give him all the insight I had about you get a death threat, you report it to the FBI, but you don't show fear, because if they can intimidate you, then they think they have won. And you have to let them know there are some things worth dying for. And he was taking it all in. He was like, that's deep. And the last thing he said to me was, you keep fighting for us in the courtroom, and I'm going to fight to uplift the culture on the movie screen. And I thought that was so profound.
Wow. Brenda and Aaron, could you speak to that?
I'm glad that Ben told that story, because I think that's how the fight happens, is making sure that positive, important messages are told, that we celebrate incredible leaders from the past and present, for that matter. You know, there was that, you know, the industry used to say terrible things like, you know, movies that feature people of color don't travel. It's not true. You know, that there isn't a market around the world. That's not true. We know that, you know, it's obvious. You see the numbers don't lie. And the reality, if you look at some of the streamers, Apple, Netflix, some of the programming that feature people of color are the most popular programming by far worldwide, not just in the United States. So it's wonderful that we're hearing so many companies in the last while talk about diversity issues and talking about telling different kinds of stories. It's wonderful to see that happen. It's long overdue. But we've always done that at Braun. It's something that it's always been part of who we are. So for us, the filmmakers that we're celebrating, the filmmakers that we get behind, the stories that we want to tell, are led by incredible, important voices that we want to celebrate and ensure that we can help them get their stories to the screen. You know, when I see films like, you know, my friend Charles King talked to me about his film, Judas and the Black Messiah, that he was putting together with Ryan and Shaka. And, you know, when I read that script and I found out who was in it, the incredible Daniel Kaluuya and Lakeith Stanfield, who are two of the greatest actors, period, black or white, they're two of the greatest young actors out there. You know, those are the kinds of stories that for us, you know, just have to be told. You know, it's just important for us to get behind those kinds of films. And the studios that we work with, we're fortunate enough to be in partnership with many. They know, and they come to us with those kinds of stories because they know they want Braun involved, and they know that we're going to be receptive to getting involved with them in those stories. And conversely, when we're developing and putting those stories together, we have many partners who are now there and are working alongside us to take those stories to the world. And that's a wonderful thing that's happening right now. So the continued promotion of those stories are critical. Yes, sir.
No,
Yeah,
I was, you know,
exactly.
it really didn't hit me. And I'm, you know, you've been a friend of mine for quite a while now, but I really didn't connect the dots until I'm looking at you and I see the posters behind you. And, you know, I actually feel bad. I actually feel bad for taking our friendship for granted because, you know, we talk about this all the time, but you and Brenda, no, seriously, you and Brenda have done an extraordinary job in the last 10 years of pushing those stories. Extraordinary job. I mean, when I think about Birth of a Nation, when I think about Fences, when I think about Queen and Slim, and when I think about Monster and your indefatigable energy around Monster, I mean, you two are really a very necessary force of nature in a whitewashed, milquetoast Hollywood that I live in, where these films otherwise would not be getting financed and made. I know that for a fucking fact. And you guys are, I mean, I really tip my hat to you, seriously. I mean, you know, happy 10-year anniversary.
Salute.
And I hope you have another 10 years of just
Thank you for
magic.
that.
I mean, it's so special. It really is, seriously.
Thank you.
Thank
and
you.
I think for Brenda and I, you know, one thing I want to say, and it's important, is that, you know, we are We have a team that's as focused and as dedicated, and as these stories, telling these stories, getting them to the world is as important to that team, because we're fortunate enough we're involved in a lot of things in a lot of different mediums, and that team that we have it feels that passion, that same passion that we have, number one. And number two, we have a production financing partner in a company called Creative Wealth Media, led by Jason Cloth, and he, working with me, working with Brenda for all these years, has helped us, and we wouldn't be here without the support that they've given us. They've put a lot of money together to help us and support our vision for making sure that we're telling those kinds of stories. And I appreciate that, Larry. It's important to me to it's important to me that you see that, and I thank you. It's great for friends to sort of see that amongst each other. I think for Brenda and I, like, it's interesting, and thank you for celebrating our 10-year anniversary. But it's odd about this 10-year anniversary right now is that, in a weird way, I feel like we took the last 10 years to get to the starting line. And what I mean by that is, Braun has been around for 10 years. It's only been the last several years that our company has really sort of grown the way that it has, and has the sort of visibility that it does have. And that was really because of 2015 and 16 with Birth of a Nation and Fences. Those two films were the noisy movies for Braun that helped us. We had done many movies before that, but those two films really put our name out there and allowed us to grow exponentially since that time in pretty much 2016. And for me, when I think about what we've been able to accomplish and the team we have around us, I really feel like we now have all the right pieces in place to really do something special the next 10 years. And storytelling and escapism are such incredible and important things for us all, but also telling really important stories, learning from our history. So the hope being that it's not repeated. Unfortunately, that's not the case. So we have to continue to tell those stories so people will stop repeating.
It's really important for us to have, like, going back into the positive imagery of Black and Brown people. I think that's really, really important in terms of the responsibility that we have as content providers, as putting that out there. Because if we have positive imagery around those role models, young Black and Brown people will see it as an opportunity. If you can see it, you can be it.
Certainly to the point as it relates to the stories that you're choosing to tell. It's telling that the stories that you have chosen to partner with, to lift up, are stories that are just so prevalent and just real in everyday lives, whether it's Queen and Slim and police encounters, Bombshell and the treatment of women and misogyny that we're particularly experiencing, even in this political arena and the political narrative that's happening now, and so many of your films that touch on issues that we're dealing with on a day-to-day basis. So as you were developing those films, and we all know that you're proud Canadians, how did you think about that? These films, they were shot and you made these decisions years ago, and now they're at the epicenter of everything that we're thinking about in this country, and really a part of driving a very critical conversation right now as it relates to just the movement.
That's an honor, quite frankly. And that really speaks to the incredible talents of the creatives that we've been fortunate enough to support. So when our films have success, when our films are noisy and visible and referenced in media or referenced in culture, it's proud moments for us, for sure. But there are many movies we've made over the years that celebrate diversity, that are challenging situations about real lives, that haven't had a lot of commercial success or didn't see the kind of acclaim that other films have of ours, rather. I'm still as proud of those movies and proud of those stories that we told, because sort of my hope is that someday the overall body of work that we have done as a company is really going to be looked at as just important stories that help, inform the world, and that's our goal. That's our goal.
Well, Larry raised a very important point around appropriation. Ben raised very important points around imagery and how that imagery impacts just a courtroom experience for someone. As you think about the development process, what are your thoughts on just consulting or the consultative process when producing, particularly content on Black people? Have you ever consulted or worked with institutions, on the ground organizations, Color of Change, NAACP, and making sure you get it right? Because that's a very important aspect.
All of them, every one of them, always. It's an important part that we have a responsibility as storytellers that, especially when you're dealing with a real life situation, especially when you're telling a story about somebody's life or a situation, it's a tremendous responsibility. I take that, we take on that responsibility constantly. We investigate, we bring on consultants, absolutely. We speak with those who've been there. It's a tremendous responsibility for us to ensure that those stories are told the right way.
Yeah, likewise.
Especially with Mr. Crump right here. He's on the call, and just in terms of what we're working with him on, and it's an honor. It's an absolute honor to be working with you on anything at any point in time, given how busy you are in terms of your representation and fighting on the ground and your advocacy. So in terms of things being authentic, who better than Mr. Benjamin Crump? We owe a lot to you. Society owes a lot to you, and we appreciate all that you do. And Larry, I don't want to leave you out because you amplify voices, you amplify imagery, you also acknowledge artists for their beautiful artistry by way of music. They are poets, and they advocate and they provide entertainment in a way that we consume daily and we live by. So thank you both.
Well, thank you all for just having this wonderful conversation. And we unfortunately have to wrap up. And before we wrap up, we do want to give everybody an opportunity just to share last words. Larry, I want to get you in here, go to Ben, and we'll close out with Brenda and Aaron.
I'm going to, give the floor to Ben first. That's, Ben's a man. Go ahead.
Now, Larry, it was a pleasure getting to meet you on this panel. Hopefully, when the COVID-19 pandemic is over, we can all get together in person and celebrate Braun's 10-year anniversary appropriately.
Absolutely.
For doing such amazing, important work. And Brenda, like I always say, we're all in this struggle together. Everybody has a role to play. Me in the courtroom, you all lifting up the culture in film and TV, and my brother Larry, that king, what he's doing in a music space to amplify voices and empower young voices of color is just on a phenomenal level. So the one thing I would say is America and the world is dealing with this COVID-19 pandemic. Well, we as Black people, we're not only having to deal with that, but we're also having to deal with the COVID-19 pandemic. And Joteka, you know what that's about. The first Africans were brought to America in 1619. And for the last 401 years, it has been systematic racism and oppression that we're still struggling to overcome that pandemic. And I think the solution is everybody has to contribute. And that's why I thought this conversation was such a important one. And I'm so happy to be included. God bless you all. I salute each and every one of you for how you contribute to uplift the culture.
Thank you. Yeah, and I'll follow that with I'll follow that with the one thing that I realized in particular over the last 2 years, and started my day this morning actually by Ben, you may know her. I started my day this morning by speaking to Valerie Jarrett, because the one thing I realized is not only do the depictions and the platform with which I look after matter in that regard, and Apple Music is the #1 music service in the world for Black culture, but we have to do better. We have to give back. So we actually have a battle, hotly anticipated battle on Monday between my sisters Brandy and Monica. And right after I get off the phone here, I'm going to jump into a discussion around, we're going to do a surprise merch drop. And I think the merch is going to go, given how highly anticipated the battle is. And I called Sister Valerie this morning and I said, Valerie, I want to give 100% of the proceeds to you for when we all vote. We don't need the money, but there's nothing more important right now than what you and Michelle are doing. And I want to be able to make sure that you know that we know that, and we want to be able to get back to you. So from my perspective, whether he's doing that or Brother Jack Dorsey, who's been such an ally in the fight with us over the past year, we gave away together $1 million to Detroit by way of Brother Eminem, Lil Wayne, and Apple. My sister Lisa Jackson, who works at Apple, had a government affairs environmental policy. We got together with Lil Wayne. We gave away $200,000 to the New Orleans Food Bank a couple of months ago too. And just doing that on a consistent basis has brought even further fulfillment to me about what it means. And I was talking to Aaron the other day about it, and it really clicked on this call to me. And I was actually in a very defeated place when I spoke to Aaron about whether or not we could win this fight. Whether or not you could agree to disagree with someone and they could still give you a ride home at the end of the day. And I think more positive depictions could help to bust the myths of how we're perceived. And I think what Braun is doing in that regard by advancing that agenda is very important, because I don't know if there could have been a Barack and Michelle without the Cosby Show. And the positive depictions that the Huxtables put out there really did subconsciously and psychologically condition America for the first Black family in the White House. And I think a continuation of that in other regards is very necessary. So those are my closing remarks, and I hope that we can all accomplish that together,
Thank you for that. And I think one of the things you mentioned there was just about voting, right? I think you said something about voting there. And, one of the things that Braun is involved in is supporting Deon Taylor and Roxanne Taylor and an initiative that they founded in 2016, which is now getting noisier and noisier. And Mr. Crump was involved with something with them as well recently. And that's BeWoke.vote, which is one of the many important associations that are going out and into the communities to help people register and help people get access to voting. That is the most critical way that we can create at least a start of some change in America. It's so needed. It's so important that voices get out there. So for us, that's something that we're very proud to be part of, and will support in any way we can. So I guess my closing remarks are, first off, again, really thank all three of you. Thank you guys very much. It's truly an honor to have you guys here. It's also an honor to call you guys friends and colleagues, and the work that you guys do individually and the work that we're all going to collectively do together in continuing to inform, continue to educate, continue to entertain. Those are all things that are so critically important to Braun, to Brenda and myself, our family. And for us, we're just so pleased, so thankful of the people we get to do our work with. So thank you guys very much for that. And Brenda, you finish it up. Let's do it.
I will. Joteka, thank you so much for all your work you're doing politically and otherwise. I think that people should actually recognize that as well. I was on a call earlier with you, and one of the things that Kamala Harris had said in terms of what her mother had given her advice on is, she, be the first to do many things, but certainly not the last, because we want to take on as many as we can to collaborate and to be united and unified in the best way that we can be. And as we all know, and I think this dates us a little bit in terms of an old adage from the 1980s, united we stand, divided we fall. And we'll end on that.
I think absolutely that is how we could end this. Thank you all so much, and sincere wishes to the family of Chadwick Boseman, and then to all of the families that you represent every single day.
Thank you for all you do, Ben. Truly, thank you for all you do.
We're all in this together, y'all.
Yes, sir.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.